Washington, D.C., April 14th, 1865. The war is almost over. For 4 long, brutal years, the United States of America has been tearing itself apart. Brother against brother, father against son, more than 600,000 people are dead. The ground across the country is still wet with blood. But tonight, for the first time in years, there is something in the air that feels like hope. Inside Ford's Theater, a man sits in a private box above the stage. He is tall, 6 feet and 4 inches, the tallest man ever to lead this nation. His face is tired, deeply, deeply tired, the kind of tired that does not come from a single sleepless night, but from carrying the weight of an entire country on your back for years. His wife is beside him. They are watching a comedy. He is laughing. And people in the crowd who look up and see him laughing feel something ease inside their chests. Because if he can laugh, maybe it will all be okay. The war is ending. He survived it. They all survived it. Nobody in that theater knows what is about to happen. A shot, one shot, and everything changes. The tallest president America has ever had slumps forward in his chair. His wife grabs him. People are screaming. A man leaps from the box to the stage below, catches his boot on the flag hanging over the rail, and crashes to the floor. He shouts something in Latin, limps and runs. 6 men carry the president out of the theater and across the street into a small boarding house. 14 doctors will come that night. Every single one of them will say the same thing. There is nothing we can do. He will not recover. At 7:22 the next morning, on April 15th, 1865, Abraham Lincoln is gone. The Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, standing in that small dark room, looks at the man lying still on the bed, and he says quietly, almost to himself, "Now he belongs to the ages." But who was this man? Who was the person that an entire nation would mourn? The man that history would remember not just as a president, but as something closer to a symbol, a proof. A living answer to the question, how far can one human being go on almost nothing at all? This is that story. There is no grand beginning here, no wealthy family, no fine house, no servants or soft beds or silver spoons. Abraham Lincoln is born in a 1-room log cabin with a dirt floor. The walls are made of rough logs. The wind comes through the gaps. There is no glass in the windows. There is barely a window at all. His father, Thomas Lincoln, is a farmer and a carpenter, a hard, quiet man. His mother, Nancy Hanks, is a woman the people who knew her describe as gentle and deeply kind. The kind of person who reads the Bible aloud to her children in the evenings and means every word of it. The family is poor. Not pretend to be poor, actually poor. The kind of poor where you do not know if there will be enough food next season. The kind of poor where the children go to school maybe a few weeks a year when they are not needed on the farm. Abraham has a sister, Sarah, 2 years older than him, and a baby brother, Thomas Jr., who does not survive infancy. So it is just the 4 of them, a tiny family in a tiny cabin in the Kentucky wilderness, with bears in the woods and panthers screaming in the dark. Abraham will remember it later in life. He will describe the poverty as pretty pinching at times. That is his way. He never complained loudly. He just stated facts quietly and moved on. When he is 2 years old, the family moves to a farm called Knob Creek, just a few miles away. He grows up there. He helps his father plant corn and pumpkins. He helps clear the fields. He does not love hunting and fishing the way other boys do. What he loves is something else entirely. He loves words. Books are rare on the frontier. There is no library. There is no bookshop. When Abraham gets hold of a book, a neighbor's book, a borrowed book, any book at all, he reads it by firelight until his eyes hurt. Then he reads it again. A childhood friend later remembers seeing him at night, red-eyed and messy-haired, bending over a page in the dim glow of the fire, completely lost in whatever world was inside those pages. He is 7 years old when his father loses the farm in a land title dispute. They move again, this time to Indiana. Indiana is rougher, wilder. The family arrives and Thomas Lincoln builds a shelter so basic it barely deserves the name. 3 walls and a roof. The 4th side is open to the weather. They live behind a fire to keep warm. They survive the winter. Thomas eventually builds a real cabin. Life settles into a hard, steady rhythm. And then, in October 1818, Nancy Lincoln gets sick. The sickness is called milk sickness, caused by drinking milk from cows that have eaten a poisonous plant. It moves fast. There is no cure. On October 5, 1818, Abraham's mother dies. He is 9 years old. His sister Sarah is 11. She tries to hold the household together. 2 children, a grieving father, and a wilderness around them. Lincoln almost never speaks about his mother in his adult life, but once to a friend he says something that stays. All that I am or hope to be, I owe to my angel mother. About a year after Nancy dies, Thomas Lincoln travels back to Kentucky and returns with a woman named Sarah Bush Johnston, a widow with 3 children of her own. She walks into that rough Indiana cabin and she sees what needs to be done. She cleans it. She brings furniture. She brings warmth. She treats Abraham and his sister as her own. Abraham calls her Mama. She is the one who pushes him toward learning. She sees something in this tall, quiet, bookish boy that others might miss. She tells him to keep reading. She finds him books. She believes in him when he has little reason to believe in himself. In all his years in Indiana, Abraham Lincoln goes to school for a total of less than 12 months. His teachers are traveling men, stopping in the frontier settlements to teach for a few weeks before moving on. He learns to read and write and do basic arithmetic. But mostly he teaches himself. He reads everything: the Bible, Aesop's fables, a biography of George Washington. He reads so much that his father gets frustrated with him. Thomas Lincoln thinks books are a waste of time when there is work to be done. He sometimes grabs the book out of Abraham's hands. He hires the boy out to neighboring farms and keeps the wages, as was common for fathers to do in those days. Abraham does not complain. He goes to work. He comes home. He reads. Abraham Lincoln grows tall, very tall. By the time he is a teenager, he towers over the men around him, 6 feet and 4 inches, in a time when the average man is closer to 5.5 feet. He is strong too, with long arms that make him deadly with an axe. He can split a fence rail faster than almost anyone. But his mind is still what sets him apart. People notice it. There is something different about the way he talks. He tells stories. He uses humor in a way that is hard to ignore. People gather around him when he speaks, not because he is commanding or loud, but because what he says is interesting, and funny, and true. In 1828, when he is 19 years old, Lincoln takes a flatboat loaded with farm goods down the Mississippi River all the way to New Orleans. It is the first time he has ever seen a big city. It is the first time he has seen the wider world. And in New Orleans, he sees something else for the first time. Slavery. Not the distant, abstract idea of it, the actual thing. Men and women chained and sold on the docks like livestock. Families separated, children pulled from their mothers, human beings treated as property. Lincoln watches. He does not say much at the time, but those who were with him say he is shaken. A friend remembers him watching the slave market and saying nothing, just standing very still, his jaw tight, before turning and walking away. He will not forget what he saw in New Orleans. Not ever. In 1830, when Abraham is 21, the family moves again, this time to Illinois. He helps build one more cabin, helps clear one more field, and then he leaves. He is done being a boy on his father's farm. He needs to become something. He settles in a small town called New Salem. He tries several things. He works in a store. He runs for the state legislature and loses. He co-owns a general store that fails and leaves him in debt for years. He serves as a captain in the militia during the Black Hawk War of 1832, a conflict between the United States and a group of Native American tribes in Illinois and Wisconsin. He sees almost no actual combat, but he does do something that people talk about for years. One day during the war, a frightened old Native American man wanders into the militia camp, carrying a paper saying he is friendly. The soldiers want to kill him. They are angry. They want to fight someone. Lincoln steps in front of them. He looks at the men aiming their muskets and he tells them they will not harm this man. The men back down. Lincoln will say later that it is one of his proudest moments. After the war, he comes back to New Salem. He works as a postmaster. He teaches himself how to survey land. He studies law. He reads law books the same way he has read everything since he was a child. By himself, at night, by whatever light he can find. He borrows books. He walks miles to borrow books. He returns them and borrows more. In 1834, he runs for the Illinois state legislature again. This time he wins. He is 25 years old. He wins again in 1836, and 1838, and 1840. He becomes a lawyer. He moves to Springfield, the state capital. He builds a reputation as someone who is fair, careful, and honest. People start calling him Honest Abe. He does not love the nickname, but it sticks because it is true. He is making himself, one piece at a time, from nothing. In Springfield, Lincoln meets a woman named Mary Todd. She is nothing like him. She is from a wealthy Kentucky family. She is educated, well-read, socially confident in a way that Lincoln, for all his gifts, never quite is. She wears fine dresses and moves easily in high society. He is awkward at parties. He sometimes does not know what to do with his large hands. But she sees something in him. She tells a friend that she intends to one day be the wife of a president. And this tall, clumsy, brilliant man from nowhere is the one she has chosen. Their courtship is difficult. Lincoln breaks off their engagement once, in 1841, in what he later calls the fatal 1st of January. He falls into a deep depression. He writes to a friend that he is the most miserable man alive. He is absent from the state legislature for a week. People worry about him. Lincoln has always struggled with what he called the hypo, his own word for what we might today call depression. It is not a weakness he talks about openly, but it is real. It comes for him in waves, dark periods where the world feels heavy and hopeless. But he always comes back. He and Mary reconcile. On November 4th, 1842, they marry. Mary's family does not fully approve of the match. Abraham Lincoln is too rough, too low-born, but the two of them decide together, and that is that. They have 4 sons, Robert, Edward, William, and Thomas, who they call Tad. Only Robert will live to see old age. Edward dies in 1850 at the age of 3. William, the son Lincoln is said to love most deeply, dies in 1862 inside the White House at the age of 11, while his father is in the middle of fighting the Civil War. Tad survives the war, but dies in 1871 at the age of 18. Abraham Lincoln buries 3 of his 4 children. He buries his mother. He buries his sister Sarah, who dies in childbirth in 1828 when Lincoln is 19. There are people who face one terrible loss and never recover. Lincoln faces loss after loss after loss, and somehow he keeps going. Not because he does not feel it, he feels everything, deeply. But there is something in him that refuses to stop. Lincoln serves one term in the United States Congress from 1847 to 1849. He does not make a great splash. He opposes the war with Mexico, which is unpopular in his district. He does not win another term. He goes back to Springfield. He goes back to law. He becomes very good at it. He appears before the Illinois Supreme Court over 300 times. He represents farmers, railroad companies, ordinary people in trouble. For a while it looks like his political life might be over, and then something happens that drags him back. In 1854, the United States Congress passes the Kansas-Nebraska Act. It allows the people of new territories to vote on whether they want slavery or not. To many people in the North, this feels like slavery is being allowed to spread, like a door is being opened that should stay shut. Lincoln cannot stay quiet. He gives a speech in Peoria, Illinois that lasts 3 hours. He lays out in plain, careful language exactly why the spread of slavery is wrong. Not just morally wrong, but wrong for what America is supposed to be. A country where all men are created equal. Those are not just words to Lincoln. He actually believes them. People listen. People respond. Lincoln is back. He joins the new Republican Party, which is forming specifically around the idea of stopping slavery from spreading further. In 1858, he runs for the United States Senate against Stephen Douglas, one of the most powerful politicians in America. He loses, but before he loses, something remarkable happens. Lincoln and Douglas hold a series of 7 debates across Illinois. They travel from town to town, standing on outdoor platforms in the summer heat, arguing about the future of the country in front of huge crowds. Thousands of people come to watch. Newspapers across the nation cover every word. Douglas is polished and confident. Lincoln is awkward and strange-looking. But when Lincoln speaks, something happens. The words are clear. The logic is undeniable. The moral weight is heavy. He says one thing during these debates that people quote for the next 100 years. "A house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free." Lincoln loses the Senate race, but the debates make him famous. They plant his name in the minds of people all across the country. In 1860, the Republican Party nominates him for president. He is what political people call a dark horse. Not the favorite, not the most famous name in the room, but the one who, when everything is counted up, everyone can agree on. In November 1860, Abraham Lincoln is elected the 16th President of the United States. He is 51 years old. He was born on a dirt floor. And before he even gets to Washington, before he is even inaugurated, the country starts falling apart. South Carolina secedes from the Union in December 1860. By the time Lincoln takes office in March 1861, 6 more states have followed. They form their own government, the Confederate States of America, and name their own president, Jefferson Davis. The Union that Lincoln has been elected to lead no longer fully exists. The Civil War begins on April 12, 1861, when Confederate forces fire on Fort Sumter, a United States fort in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina. Lincoln is not a military man. He has almost no experience of war. His time as a militia captain in the Black Hawk War barely counts. Now he is the commander-in-chief of an army fighting the biggest war in American history. He learns quickly. He reads books on military strategy. He visits the troops in the field. He fires generals who do not perform and searches for ones who will. He goes through general after general, McDowell, McClellan, Pope, McClellan again, Burnside, Hooker, Meade, looking, searching. The war is not going well in the early years. The Confederate armies fight hard. The Union suffers terrible defeats. The dead pile up at a rate that shocks the nation. Families in the North receive letters. Sons who left home will not come home. Lincoln sits in the White House and bears the weight of every single one. His secretaries notice that he looks older every week. The lines in his face deepen. His eyes, which were always sad, become sadder still. He barely sleeps. He works through the nights. He reads the telegrams as they come in from the battlefield, sometimes lying on a cot in the telegraph office just to be closer to the news. And then in February 1862, William dies. His son, 11 years old, typhoid fever, right there in the White House while the war is raging. People who work with Lincoln say he is never quite the same after that. He keeps working. He has to. But something in him breaks in a way that never fully heals. He goes to see William's body twice after the boy dies, just to sit with him, just to be there. Then he goes back to the war. Lincoln has known since the beginning that the slavery question cannot be avoided. The war is about many things: states' rights, economics, political power. But underneath all of it always is slavery. He moves carefully. He does not want to lose the border states, the slave states that have stayed in the Union. He does not want to push them out, but he also knows that something has to change, morally, strategically, politically. On September 22, 1862, Lincoln issues a warning. He tells the Confederate States that if they do not return to the Union by January 1, 1863, all enslaved people in those states will be declared free. No Confederate state responds. So on January 1, 1863, Lincoln signs the Emancipation Proclamation. By his authority as Commander-in-Chief, he declares that all enslaved people in the Confederate States are free. The proclamation does not reach everyone immediately. It cannot be enforced in areas still under Confederate control. But what it does is change the entire meaning of the war. This is no longer just a war to hold the country together. This is now a war to end slavery. And it opens the door to something else. Lincoln authorizes African American men to enlist in the Union Army. Before the war ends, more than 200,000 black soldiers and sailors will fight for the Union. They are fighting for their own freedom. And fighting hard. 3 days in July 1863 saw some of the worst fighting of the entire war. At Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, the Union and Confederate armies clash in a battle that leaves more than 50,000 men dead, wounded, or missing. The Union holds the ground. It is a turning point. 4 months later, Lincoln travels to Gettysburg to dedicate a national cemetery for the men who died there. The main speaker is Edward Everett, one of the finest orators in America. He speaks for 2 hours and 10 minutes. Then Lincoln stands up. He speaks for 2 minutes. 2 minutes, less than 300 words. Edward Everett writes to Lincoln the next day, "I should be glad if I could flatter myself that I came as near to the central idea of the occasion in 2 hours as you did in 2 minutes. What Lincoln says in those 2 minutes will be read by every schoolchild in America for generations. He takes the idea of the Declaration of Independence, the idea that all men are created equal, and he says that this war, this terrible suffering, this ocean of death must mean something, that the nation must have a new birth of freedom. That government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." Simple words, plain words, words that a child can understand, words that last forever. By 1864, Lincoln is not certain he will be re-elected. The war has gone on so long. The deaths have been so many. There are people in the North who want to negotiate peace, even if it means letting the South keep slavery. Lincoln will not do that. He refuses. He says if the country must pay the full cost for the sin of slavery, then it will pay it. He believes this in his bones. He wins the 1864 election, and by the end of the year, the war is turning. The Union finally has the General Lincoln has been searching for. Ulysses S. Grant is not flashy. He is not brilliant in a showy way. He is relentless. He pushes. He does not stop. He takes losses and keeps moving. Lincoln likes that about him. And there is William Tecumseh Sherman, who marches his army from Atlanta to the sea, cutting the Confederacy in half, destroying its ability to keep fighting. On March 4th, 1865, Lincoln delivers his second inaugural address. The war is almost over. He could say we won. He could be triumphant. He could be furious at the South for the suffering they caused. He says none of that. He says with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds. No bitterness, no revenge, no celebration of victory over a fallen enemy. Just let us heal. 5 weeks later, on April 9, 1865, Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrenders his army to General Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia. The Civil War is over. Lincoln is in the White House when he gets the news. People outside celebrate. Cannons fire in salute. There is singing, there is weeping, there is joy of the kind that comes only after tremendous pain. Lincoln smiles. He is tired, but he smiles. He has only 5 days left to live. Lincoln does not want to go to the theater. Mary has arranged it. He is tired. But the theater has already advertised that the president will attend, and he does not want to disappoint people. So he goes. The play is a British comedy called Our American Cousin. The theater is crowded. When Lincoln arrives, the orchestra plays Hail to the Chief, and the audience rises to its feet. Lincoln bows. He takes his seat in the private box above the stage, draped in American flags. He laughs during the performance. Those who see him from below say he looks relaxed, happy even. The Presidential Guard, a man named John Parker, gets bored and leaves his post outside the box to watch the play from the main floor. The door to the president's box is left unguarded. John Wilkes Booth is an actor, a famous one. He knows this theater like he knows his own home. He has been inside it dozens of times. He knows the layout. He knows the timing of the play. He knows exactly when a particular loud line will make the audience laugh so hard that any other sound will be covered. He enters the theater at approximately 10:15 in the evening. He goes up the stairs, through the empty hallway, to the door of the presidential box. He opens it. He steps inside. Lincoln slumps forward. Mary screams. Major Henry Rathbone, a young army officer in the box, lunges at Booth. Booth slashes him with a knife, catches his boot spur on the flag draped over the railing, and falls 12 feet to the stage below. He breaks a bone in his leg on landing. He shouts something in Latin, something about tyrants. Then he limps off the stage and out of the theater. He will be hunted for 12 days before Union soldiers track him to a barn in Virginia. When he refuses to surrender, he is shot. He dies that day, April 26, 1865. But Lincoln will not last that long. 6 men carry the unconscious president out of the theater and across the street into a boarding house. They lay him on a small bed in a back room. He is too tall for the bed. His feet hang off the edge. 14 doctors come through the night. Every one of them says the wound is fatal. Mary sits outside the room and cries without stopping. At 7:22 in the morning on April 15, 1865, Abraham Lincoln takes his last breath. He is 56 years old. His funeral train carries his body from Washington through 7 states, all the way back to Springfield, Illinois, where he is buried. Tens of thousands of Americans line the railroad route. They stand in the fields. They stand in the rain. They take off their hats. The man they mourn was born on a dirt floor with no shoes and no future. He taught himself to read by firelight. He taught himself the law from borrowed books. He lost his mother and his sister and 3 of his sons and still got up every morning and kept going. He held the country together when it broke in half. He signed the paper that said millions of human beings were free. He spoke at Gettysburg for 2 minutes, and those 2 minutes will outlast everything. Abraham Lincoln left behind no great fortune, no mansion with his name on it, no dynasty. He left behind a country, broken and bloody and beginning again to heal. He left behind words, simple, plain, honest words that people still repeat when they want to say something true about freedom or justice or what it means to be human. And he left behind a story that says, it does not matter where you start. It does not matter how little you have. It does not matter how many times the world knocks you down or takes something from you. What matters is what you do with what you have left. Lincoln had very little. He used every bit of it. He failed at business. He lost elections. He lost his mother and his sister and his children, and still he kept going. He led a country through its worst war and never stopped believing that the country was worth saving. He was not perfect. No person is. History has continued to examine him and debate him, as it should. But what cannot be argued is what he did. He took a broken nation and refused to let it die. He signed a document that changed the legal status of more than 3 million human beings from enslaved to free. He stood in a cemetery full of the dead and found words that still give people something to hold on to. And when someone tried to end him, the world mourned not because a president had died, but because something that felt irreplaceable was gone. Edwin Stanton knew it. Standing in that small dark room on the morning of April 15th, 1865, as the first light came through the window, he looked at the man who had once been the boy from the dirt floor cabin, and he said it quietly, like a prayer. Now he belongs to the ages. He does. He always will.